the Associated Press had to think about Sonny Gray's contract, and it's backloaded, and that makes sense on a lot of levels. Number one, the Cardinals have even said, Bill DeWitt III has said it. I think Mo's alluded to it. Bill DeWitt Jr. said it. The Cardinals do expect to have, lower revenues in 2024. How much lower, we don't know. But they've also got the TV uncertainty. So it makes sense for them to try to get that contract backloaded. And Sonny Gray was happy to do it because he really wants to be here. But what does that mean going forward? Now, I don't have to tell you how social media is. So last night, everyone, probably 98% of the people there, okay. Oh, yep, see, they're getting Yamamoto. Everybody slow down. Will this change their approach? Do they truly have more money to play with now, or are they close to being what they kind of said they would be? Like I think people might be rushing to conclusions about what this means for their payroll and what it means going forward as far as personnel. So please educate us as you always do.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, you look at this, what are they at now? So $10 million for Gray next year, which, let's take a quick note that they did the same thing for Wilson Contreras a year ago. His deal last year was $10 million, for that year, but it rises up to $18 million. And they've done that with a few other contracts as well, but it was just 12 months ago. They did the same thing, and now Contreras starts getting the weight of his contract with the Cardinals. So, let's say that, we know that Gray's 10 off the front, and that then it has more of the bulk back at the end, like you said, backloaded. So they're in that 170 range right now for a 26-man opening day rotation, depending on where arbitration goes or what that 26-man looks like. And they still want to add relievers to it. It puts them, not too far from where they expected to be, at the end of last season, which was just over $200 million for a 40-man contract or for a 40-man roster. And I know it gets confusing because, you talk about opening day payrolls this time of year, and teams talk about 40-man payrolls at the end of the year. So obviously there's at least 14 players, at minimum 14 players factored in there that you're not talking about at the beginning. But, what it does do is it creates that space for them, which they wanted to pursue relievers, and which, if there's a trade for a starter or a trade that makes sense, they're going to be involved in those too. They're open to trading some of their outfielders, one of whom, in Tyler ONeal, who's due about $5 to $6 million. So is that another cost that comes up and kind of creates a little bit more elasticity? They are, like you said, hyper aware of the fact that they want to get back to where they were headed last year, but they realize that, there is the uncertainty with the RSNs. Those are real. They don't know if that revenue is going to be as robust, in the coming years or even in the coming year. And then they have the added fact that they're coming off a 91-loss season, and they're pragmatic about what ticket sales might look like if they don't invigorate them. And they know that some of that comes with free agent signing, but a lot of that comes with play and whether or not this team is successful and whether or not fans are apprehensive and want to see it play before they pay tickets. So, yeah, all those things go into it. What the Gray contract allows them to do is it gives them, 3 starters. They've committed roughly a little more than $30 million to next year. They can still go, in new starters. Then you add in you got almost $50 million if you put in Miklasz, and then almost $60 million if you put in Matz. And it still gives them room for the bullpen ads that they want.
I wrote a piece today about it because I had to take advantage of some of the research that I always go for. I get crazy, as you know, with that. But the bullpen was just so awful last year. And I know, listen, they didn't have Ryan Helsley for 2.5 months. I get it. But there's no guarantee that they can really count on him going forward. I just know there's some, internal frustration. Maybe, is he going to be able to pitch more often? And
Right.
if he says he's going to be available, is he going to be available, or is he sort of at a last minute say that I don't think I can go tonight? So Gallegos' stuff is backed up. Maybe it was a 1 year blip. Maybe it's more than that. But they have got a hell of. Listen, man, I'm telling you, but for our listeners, they have got a hell of a lot to work to do in this bullpen. It's just not a touch up. I mean, it's kind of like they got to renovate some major parts. How aggressive would you envision that they will be, whether it be signing, whether it be trades, whether it would be the international market? Do you expect them to be pretty aggressive in remodeling or making over that bullpen?
Well, the want is there and the motivation is there, and then really the options are there. There are a lot of starting pitchers available and then you have plenty of bullpen guys available too. It's about finding the right one, and the certainty of a reliever is what costs, right? I mean, it's a volatile job. So like the guys who are least volatile are the ones that are going to make the most money. They think they have the makings of a pretty strong back end with another addition, an outside addition. They like what Jojo Romero did. They like what they expect to see from Helsley, and they think Gio, one more year or having a full year with the pitch timer and all of that is going to be better. Add one more kind of right-hander to that mix, and they feel like they have the makings of a really strong back end. They also think they're going to help. It's going to help the bullpen by having the starters just handle innings, and there's a lot of truth to that.
Sure, absolutely.
You look at when they struggled, and Jordan Hicks had just an awful April, and it was really good for a stretch, but that wasn't going to erase the awful April from the bullpen's ERA and the some of the kind of bruises that everybody took there because they were covering for a rotation that just was not shouldering its workload or the necessary workload for a contender. So they think that that there's more to the bullpen, more ingredients to a strong bullpen than overall performance would suggest. But to have it all come together, to your point, Mo said it had holes that they needed to fill. He was given the opportunity to say, well, it's good enough to start the year and then we'll work on it as it goes. And he said no. He said no. There are holes to fill was his phrase. And I know that one of those holes is at least finding somebody there for that back end. And as you said, that could come from free agency. There's some intriguing names out there that aren't Josh Hader. That could come internationally. There are a couple of relievers coming over from Asia's best top leagues that are at least of some interest to the Cardinals and are probably going to be within their price range, like O or Kim was. And then there are the trades. The Cardinals and the Yankees have talked, for example, and one of the names batted around was a reliever from the Yankees. So, there's options out there.
Are you there? Did I lose you? Or are you still there? Okay, my bad.
I'm still there.
Sorry.
No,
Derrick Goold with us, the great Derrick Goold with us from the Post-Dispatch, STLtoday.com. Follow him on Twitter at @DGould. Are you hearing anything on, or maybe the best way to put it is, what's your expectation on, stuff that we've talked about so much? The Cardinals perhaps moving Tyler ONeal or Dylan Carlson or both. Do you still think that is on the front burner, so to speak? Because that's the expectation. It may be incorrect, but that's the general expectations. What do you think?
No, I mean, I know that I know they've had teams interested, or there are teams interested in Dylan Carlson, and I know the Cardinals are open to trading Tyler ONeal, and there's some thought that maybe that would be beneficial for him and for the Cardinals, right? So it depends on who you ask in the industry as to who it benefits most, but at least the perception is from people outside the Cardinals that, Tyler might benefit from going to a new place. So, yeah, I mean, those are still real things. The Cardinals have, I think, among the candid answers that they had recently was this idea that, they weren't really invested in the trade talks, Bernie, because they were trying to pin down these free agent things. And I think, the description that Mozeliak and Gray gave in concert of the courtship of him, really was revealing that the Cardinals wanted to get that bedrock of innings that we've talked so much about and make sure that when everything kind of all the music stopped, either at the winter meetings or a few weeks after, they weren't without those innings. And so they wanted to get those in place first. They wanted to know what those costs were, and then they wanted to make a play for the guy who we've long talked about in Sonny Gray was the target. Throughout that process, I was on Buster Olney's podcast yesterday, and Buster Olney brought up that he'd heard from folks out just like not urgent or not engaged with Cardinals were with trade talks. And it's like, yeah, well, that makes sense because they were focused on these other things. And while they can multitask, they didn't want to go into those trade talks again without some certainty of innings. Well, now they have it. And now they can move on, and now they're going to. And that's what they see the winter meetings for.
Derrick Goold with us here on 590 Fan KFNS live today, as we are every other Wednesday at Friendly Sports Bar and Grill in South County, Bayless and 55. We'll have Matt Hayes from Saturday Down South talking college football at 5 o'clock, and Jim Thomas, or 4 o'clock, I should say, and then Jim Thomas is going to be on site. Derrick Gould's friend and colleague, same with me, friend and colleague, JT, and I know he's got a book coming out on the
That's
Blues.
fantastic.
So, yeah, we got a lot to talk to him about. All right, and I'm kind of jumping ahead looking into 2024 because I think one thing that's just virtually certain is that their two catchers will be Contreras and Herrera. Do you have any kind of sense of how the actual catching time would be divvied up? Because Contreras did have he had a good percentage of his games as a designated hitter, and I'm not praising that or criticizing it. It's just the reality. He did spend a lot of time at DH. And we know the Cardinals' philosophy on young players that they think have really got something that they want them to play. What kind of arrangement would you envision? I mean, no one's going to hold you to this because that's up to the Cardinals to decide. But I doubt that Herrera is going to be sitting in the dugout a lot. So how would you envision that playing out?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know specifically. I know that I'm not sure that they know specifically, because so much of it will be determined by the strides that both of those gentlemen make behind the plate, right? Herrera, young catcher, really changed his status with the organization, obviously, with his performance. They name him the Player of the Year. They moved Kisner off the 40-man. They non-tender him. Even though they had options with Herrera, they could send him to AAA next year. So he's obviously radically changed, radically enhanced his status. But there's a difference between that and then taking the stride to a lot of starts. They think he has it in, but Contreras has the job, and he has the homework, and he's going to have time this winter where there's a specific stretch of work that he's going to do, and curriculum, I think, is the phrase that they use to describe what they have planned for him and how he embraces that and how he comes to spring training. And also, I think it's fascinating. One little element about this, right, is last year, remember early in the year, it was like, the their call don't make sense. And there was Contreras was like, why aren't these guys throwing inside? Why won't they pitch mean? That's what he told me. He goes, why won't these guys pitch mean? Well, some of that was he didn't have time to get to know some of the pitchers, right, because of the WBC. Right. He had a lot of stuff going on in spring that was more mechanical and fundamental that he was working on. Well, you know what? Like a byproduct of these free agent signings is he gets to start fresh with three new guys who he gets to learn, doesn't come in with anything from last year, all of that. I think that'll be really fascinating to watch, the fresh start he gets with a rotation, 3/5 of it, and really, honestly, 4/5 of it, because how much time did he really get to spend with Matt? So I think that's a really interesting part of this.
It is.
And I think, Bernie, that they're going to want to play him a lot, at least until, he shows otherwise. And then they have Herrera ready to go.
Derrick, I think I got time for about one more question. I could talk to you for 2 hours. You know that if all things were open. But, now that we've all had collectively a few days to kind of absorb the the meaning of what the Cardinals did with Sonny Gray and Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. Other than we talked about it, the innings void is going to be filled to a large extent, and there's every one of those guys brings something to the table. We all agree Lance Lynn is going to have to come up with some ways to reduce the home runs allowed. I think Kyle Gibson's actually, the quality of his performance, I think, is actually underrated. I think people don't appreciate him enough as a pitcher.
Right.
He is a big-time innings guy. And Gray's really good. I'll just leave it at that. He's really good. I don't. You want to call him a number one? You want to call him a number two? It doesn't matter to me. He's really good, and they could use another guy like that. But he's really good. But I wanted to ask you, what do these guys bring to the premises in terms of some value that maybe doesn't have anything directly to do with their pitching? Whether it's their influence on others, it's their leadership, it's good cop, bad cop, pushing teammates to get better, helping teammates. They all seem to be really, really well versed in that type of leadership style. How do you think they can help in those so-called intangible ways?
Yeah, a lot. A lot. Lance Lynn, as you know, does not put up with much nonsense and is not afraid to share that opinion. Sometimes it entertains his teammates. Sometimes it, ruffles his teammates. It always, in a lot of ways, keeps his teammates honest. And he has really grown in that role since last he was with the Cardinals. Kyle Gibson described that to me, that there's a real good, accountability that comes with being on Lance's team and on Lance's side and in a rotation with him. Kyle Gibson last year was the elder statesman for a very young Baltimore Orioles team. And while he kind of downplays it, everybody I've talked to just raves about the presence that he is, as far as being available to talk. The few times that he does speak up in the clubhouse, it's with intent. A lot of it is personal work. A lot of it is, noticing and being available and working with those young guys. And then, of course, Sonny Gray, who, his press conference was a clinic in what Chris Carpenter used to call the team within a team, Bernie, just the way he would describe how a rotation operates together. He made the point that, one pitcher cannot make a team a contender, but one pitcher can sure help guide a rotation to make a team a contender on the other 4 days he's not pitching. And I think this is something that they clearly wanted, whether they've articulated it as much as they have, but they clearly wanted both some substance and some sandpaper and some seasoning from their additions, and they got it. Yeah, thanks, Bernie. Not sure if you heard me. Thank you.
Yep, and we'll talk soon. When do you leave for the winter meetings?
I leave Sunday. Sunday.
Well, we'll try to track you down next week, but until then,
sounds good.
Be good. I know you'll work hard. Be good. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernie. Have a great day.
You too. That's funny. Why do I tell him to be good? He's always good. It's kind of stupid, isn't it? Right?
He's on his best behavior. He's always working, though. He's always digging for information.
He is.